Welcome to The Array, the podcast dedicated to delivering AI clarity for the marketing community, presented by Jacquard. Every week, we'll discuss the latest developments in AI and MarTech with an informed and inspiring guest and unpack what it means for today's enterprise marketers. My name is Toby Coulthard, Chief Product Officer at Jacquard, the AI brand messaging leader, and with me always, the kung fu knowing Neo to my sensibly stylish Renault Clio, it's Jasper Pye, Chief Technology Officer of Jacquard. How are you, Jasper?
Is that a Matrix reference?
I believe it is. I wish it wasn't. I wish I didn't have to say any of this. But yeah, I think that is a Keanu Reeves Matrix reference.
I feel like I've come off a little bit better in that one than you.
As always, I don't think there's a single one where I've come off well. Not even better, but just even well to begin with.
You need to speak to the writers about that.
Mm-hmm. I do. I think I do.
So you're still in London. How's your time been?
Still in London, still jet lagged. It's been all right. I landed Friday. I tried to do something differently with the flights this time, where I took a late afternoon, early evening flight, which was the worst mistake I've ever made flying, because you take off at like 6 p.m. in JFK, and then you land at 6 a.m. in London time, but you're really landing at like midnight your time. So you're not even getting tired, and you have to then stay up the entire next day. Yeah.
I feel like we should just do a whole episode on your approach to booking flights. There's a lot to unpack there.
Booking flights, points, the whole thing. We can do a whole series on that. Choosing which time to fly. There is no rhythm perfected. Or rhyme or effective strategy.
Well, it's the morning flight. You got to get the morning flight and land at like 10
o'clock. The morning flight, the 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. It's like BA 119 or whatever it is. That one is great on the surface, but then when you land, you're staring at the ceiling for 12 hours because it's 9 p.m. and it's still midday your time, or 3 p.m. and it's just pointless. There's no. Everyone keeps telling me about these effective jet lag things.
Have you tried the? Is it like the Navy SEAL one?
Be a Navy SEAL? Way
well,
easier.
Yeah. I mean, you could try to be more Navy SEAL. Mm-hmm. Apparently, that will help.
Suck
you
it up.
No.
I think that's the Navy SEAL strategy.
Yeah, I think there's a process that they've developed where you can fall asleep in seconds.
Be sleep deprived.
No, there's a process. You need to try the process.
Okay.
You should
I
try
think I know
next
what
time.
it is. It's where you like tense your body and then and
each
release it.
Individual element of your body needs to be tensed and untensed.
Sounds lovely, but I don't. I think the Navy SEALs are just exhausted the whole time, so they can sleep in seconds. I don't think it's some weird like box breathing exercise that makes it happen.
They're probably a little bit more physically,
Yeah, they probably are.
Yeah.
They probably are. This week, we've been mapping out the evolution of AI in marketing, looking at both the possibilities and the pitfalls of the moment we're in, and peering around the corner to get a picture of the things that may be coming next. We'll introduce our guest in a moment, but first, Jasper, what did you think of the conversation today?
The thing I love about Neil is he never puts any spin on anything. He just says it how it is. So if you want to learn something about AI, he's the guy to learn it from.
And he gave you advice on how to remember your dreams and everything. So he was a good.
The next episode is tomorrow morning. When we record the next one, I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna.
You should. Next episode, you can tell us all about your dreams. All right, let's dive into the discussion. Our guest today is Dr. Neil Yager, Chief Data Scientist at Jacquard. A 20-year veteran of the technology industry, Neil is a leading expert in the commercialization of AI. He has worked for prominent innovators like Canon Information Systems Research Australia, or CISRA, BT Imaging, and Biometrics. He's also written over a dozen academic publications, authored a book. He's written the book on data mining, secured several patents, and earned a PhD in computer science from the University of South Wales, Australia in 2009. Neil was awarded the Malcolm Chaikin Prize for Research Excellence in Engineering. And I suspect he's just getting started. Welcome, Neil. It's a real pleasure to have you on The Array.
Yeah, well, thanks guys for having me. It's fun to be here.
Welcome, Neil. Obviously, Neil and I have worked together for a long time now, and we're going to start. So the last couple of years have been a bit of a whirlwind when it comes to AI, and so I'm interested to get your, just to let's take a step back, and interested to just get your take on what's happened over the last 2 years. What have you found most interesting about it?
I think we should go further back than that.
Further.
Can you give us a brief history of time as it relates to AI from at least your time in the space?
Yeah, I mean that is a tricky question because, well, Jasper started by asking me to condense a few years into a few minutes, and then Toby, you followed up by asking me to condense a couple decades into a few minutes.
No pressure.
It's tough.
ChatGPT could do that.
Yeah, that's true. I should have it open in a tab. I mean, it's an understatement to say it's changed a lot. And so, like, one thing I can say is I did a PhD in AI 20 years ago. And sometimes when I meet people and I tell them that, they think, oh, wow, as if I had some sort of incredible foresight and I knew what was coming and I just picked the right career. And that's not the case at all. AI today is very different than it was 20 years ago. I mean, I was essentially unemployable when I did a PhD in AI 20 years ago. It was in some ways closer to a philosophy degree. And I learned about Descartes and Alan Turing and people like that. And it was not clear at all at the time that there was any commercial value in this. It was academically interesting. How far can we take machines? And also, what is the nature of human thought? These were the questions we were dealing with. But the sort of the business world, the commercial world, had not yet clued in that there was potential value to this. And so that's one of the main things that's changed. Is not just the technology itself, which everybody can see, but the attitude towards the technology and the value that people perceive in it.
Do you think there's some kind of pivotal moments over the last 20, 30 years, like key points in time that kind of had to have happened for us to get to the point where we are today?
Yeah, I can pick a couple. What kind of a bit broader than just AI. So part of the shift that's changed is just a movement towards more data-driven work. So once again, data scientist was not a career 20 years ago. So companies just didn't have this sort of quantitative, data-driven attitude that's so common today that we take for granted today. So one thing that you guys might not know is in 2012, that was a big year. I'll mention two events. One is that Harvard Business Review named data scientist the sexiest job on the planet. And so, as you can imagine, that changed everything, both for my professional life and my personal life when that article came out.
Knocking on the door.
But that also shows like that's around the time that, what sorts of things were happening, like, recommendation algorithms with Netflix and Amazon were starting to get traction, and businesses, they started to see the value in this. Also, like hedge funds, they were slower to get on board than you might think. But when they saw they can make money with things like algorithmic trading, that's when it started to drive up demand for these sorts of skill sets. So I think that kind of is one sort of example of a changing attitude towards the field. But also in that year, this is something maybe we can get into more detail later, but there was a really important paper that was published out of the University of Toronto. And it was in the field of computer vision. And basically, there was a step change in the performance on this data set of object recognition. They had millions of images of thousands of things. And the question is this an image of a pastry, or is this an image of a cat, right? We take that for granted today, but at the time, that was a very difficult question. And so in 2012, this paper out of University of Toronto just blew everyone else out of the water by about an order of magnitude with their solution. The authors of that paper are Ilya Sutskever, who was one of the co-founders of OpenAI, and Geoffrey Hinton, who went on to win the Nobel Prize this year. So that's also kind of one of the moments when everything started to change, and that's when deep learning really took off. So if I had to pick a year when we kind of went from the old way of AI to more of the modern age, I would say 2012.
Is that when people kind of talk about the point at which it became far more of a kind of compute and data and scalability? The more compute and the more data you put into it, the more effective these things become, versus a kind of more algorithmic approach where it's like, this algorithm's better than that one, regardless of how much compute and how much.
Absolutely. And that was the paradigm shift, that it was now about scale and learning GPUs, compute, lots and lots of training data. Whereas before that, it was handcrafted. So somebody might try to encode, okay, what are some distinctive features of a cat so that we can find it? And people would try to build that in. And this new approach was, no, don't do any handcrafted features, just learn on tons and tons of data. And that was the change that made so many things since then that possible.
The data thing seems to be, this is very topical at the moment, right? The data thing seems to be an interesting point now. Like we've seen this huge explosion and very, very rapid expansion of new models over the last 2 years. But now there seems to be concerns about them slowing down because of a lack of data. Like how we're almost going to stop creating data because the internet is filled with content and information that's produced by models. Like what's your kind of perspective on that? And do you think it's a real problem?
So that's a great question because like I just said in the context of that ImageNet paper, scale is what solved the problem. And so that kind of begs the question, how far can scale get you? And so I think there's a lot of early optimism that scale alone is what you need. But I feel like even in the past few weeks, we should probably timestamp this and mention that we're recording this in November 2024 because things are happening just so quickly. And by the time someone's listening to this, things could change. But I'll just say at the moment, there's a bit of a backlash against, not backlash, but there's some prominent people publicly pronouncing that perhaps we're coming to the end of this scale period and that the techniques that have got us so far, we're starting to see diminishing returns from them.
And is that because the models are so large that there's a lack of data for it to get any better? Is it because we are coming up to the thresholds of what was possible with compute? Is it both? Is it an algorithmic
I think there's a
problem?
few. There's one, we've kind of we're exhausting our resources of data. All of the obvious low-hanging fruit we've used, in terms of language data. I mean, we scraped the whole internet. What are these new ones? So that's one issue. But then the other issue is just probably more fundamental. To get to the next stage of intelligence, are large language models, GPT-based architectures, are they sufficient? And that's what people are also starting to doubt. Even if we had more data out there untapped, we're starting to see diminishing returns. And there's certain types of problems that the best AI models on the planet are still not well suited to solve.
So we kind of need to see there's another evolution of the underlying technology that needs to happen before we can get to that next level.
Well, so we're harvesting. What always kind of annoys me about those Google captures that you get that tell you to like click on what a bus is and what a traffic light is and all that kind of stuff to see if you're a human. That's just giving some training data to something.
Yeah, so Google uses that for training.
For everything training.
Yeah.
So going back to the Neo reference at the beginning, maybe we just need to start harvesting humans for their decision reinforcement learning, and then maybe we'll just generate more and more data infinitely.
But the problem is that I was going to say, like, there's going to be forums, places where people are still creating content. Like Reddit's obviously one of the most popular ones, but like if you go down a rabbit hole on Reddit, you're like, we really don't want to be learning from this information.
No.
And it's kind of like I said in the last episode, some of the content that's coming out of you on a weekly basis is definitely not your own content. So it's like it's even starting to happen within our sort of daily, like the communications between people, that content is starting to proliferated with AI-based content. So it's hard, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Neil, what excites you most about, given that these kind of, let's make the assumption that these limitations are kind of, we're coming up to these limitations. What is the exciting parts of AI that you see coming? What are the avenues that we can go to mitigate some of the challenges this presents?
And so on that note, just because the models themselves may be receiving diminishing returns, that doesn't mean we fully exploited them and started using them yet. There's still tons of applications. We're still really, this is what we need to remind people, is that we're in the early days of this technology and we're still really feeling ourselves around. So even if there was no more huge step changes in the quality of these models, there's still amazing things that we can do with them, and a lot of exciting things which are going to be coming out over the next few years. I use ChatGPT daily basis. Like I can feel it when it goes down. And really what it does is it helps me automate a lot of the boring things as a developer, as a programmer. It helps me automate the boring stuff, and the tools like GitHub's Copilot, they are changing my industry very, very quickly in the sense that in a couple of years from now, it's the way we used to write programs, in a text editor, writing line by line. That's going to be unrecognizable. People aren't going to be doing that in the very near future, and I think that's fun. I mean, it opens up. It's sort of this field that used to be quite difficult and technically challenging. It opens it up to new people. A whole new audience who
Which
can
gives
now
new ideas
create
and
apps,
new ways
use their creativity to do things with the aid of these AI agents.
Yeah, it brings in new people to gives new people into the conversation, gives them sort of new perspectives on what has previously been sort of a domain for a very specific sort of person.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's surprising coming from someone who doesn't have a premium ChatGPT.
He's really latched onto this.
The previous episode, Jasper said he doesn't have a premium ChatGPT subscription. And
I'm a man of the people.
Shocking to me.
I'm a man of the people.
Shocking.
I don't even have a paid for Spotify subscription. So
I don't. It's this is on Spotify. We are on Spotify right now. Can you even listen to your own podcast?
Hey, Spotify should be happy that I let them play ads to me. I said on the previous episode, I like to be advertised to, and I like good advertising, which is obviously important given the space that I work in.
Yeah,
good advertising. To the brands that out there that are doing good advertising, keep doing that. To the brands who aren't doing good advertising, stop doing that.
Yeah. Okay. Wise words.
Yeah.
So you've had in your career a lot of work with vision and imagery and how AI relates to that. I think at your time at Canon, AI generated imagery has advanced rapidly. Kind of where do you see this technology evolving? Where do you see challenges, ethical considerations? We've already seen a lot of, Gemini coming up with a lot of biases in what they're doing and generating imagery. Not necessarily directly related to a marketing use case, but where do you see that world going as it relates to AI-based imagery?
Yeah, I think this is one area where, at least in the short term, over the months and years, you can just sort of project current trends. So the quality of the images are going to get better, more realistic, fewer sort of these telltale signs about that was AI generated.
When are they going to fix the hands? That's the thing.
Yeah, that's
what everyone wants to know.
Yeah, and obviously video, like combining video and audio, is an obvious next step to be able to write a prompt and not just create an image, create me a movie. I mean, that's pretty much possible today, but you might be limited on the length of the clip. But that's all coming. That's definitely coming. But there are still some fundamental problems with the way we're going it. And as you mentioned with the fingers, that's part of it, because in its underlying model, it doesn't have this hard fact that people have 5 fingers, and so that's why sometimes it gets it wrong. And so in some areas like text on images, generating an image that has text components, that's improved considerably. But as the length of the text goes up, you can start to see problems there. And so once again, this is kind of where I've been talking about this combination of rules and text is just characters and spelling and grammatical things. That's all hard and fast. And imagery, which is this world of a continuous space of pixels, bringing this together is another example of where a breakthrough is going to be necessary in the future.
Do you think that's the kind of crux of it? What you said before about this, we have an inherent a lot of people have an inherent understanding of what's right, like the fact that human beings have 5 fingers, whereas there is kind of a gap with these models at the moment. You could argue they're not really intelligent. They don't know these things to be true. They're just very good at predicting a sequence of things that might happen.
I would, when people bring that up with me, it's this, I think it's called the Chinese room problem, where it's like, it may be true that they don't understand. It may be true the LM doesn't understand anything, and you can maybe prove that there is no sentience behind it, or you can prove that it's not really doing the way that we think. But at the end of the day, if it comes out with something which is indistinguishable from what a human would be able to come out with anyway, does it even matter? Does it matter? Like, if I ask you a question and I ask an AI a question, an LLM or whatever I ask, if the answer's the same, just because you thought about it in a way and it didn't think it thought about it in a different way, does it actually matter at the end of the day if it's really intelligent or not? If every single time I ask a question it's the same, and if a different question it's the same, it's kind of an irrelevant question. Where do you think human creativity comes into it all? Where do you think the interface between human creativity and kind of AI machine creativity? Can machines be creative, or is it really just a tool to be used?
Yeah, I mean, this to me stems on from the conversation we just had about intelligence, and creativity to me is the same. I think it's too hard to define what we mean by true intelligence. And so if a computer machine algorithm can generate something that we view as new and interesting and fresh, we may as well call it creative. There's no reason why it can't do that. I guess the question is in the future, I fully believe that there's going to be pieces of art that are purely machine generated, songs, maybe, fiction, perhaps. I think that's probably a little bit further off, but there will be totally machine generated pieces of art that are generally acclaimed, and I'm excited about that. But I think most importantly, there's going to be a collaboration between machines and people. I mean, I think that's really where the future is.
Yeah, it kind of comes down to this idea of humans using the machines to execute creative tasks, but still being at the center of the idea, the spark that drives the original creative concept. Yeah,
I think that also talks back to like that piece that I think we've spoken about before around what humans do well and what machines do well. Around the one thing that AI can always do better is do things. We've got I think it was an ad that we ran somewhere, Jacquard ad, that said kind of eat, sleep, create, repeat, and eat and sleep was crossed out because machines don't need to eat and sleep, and they can just create and repeat and create and repeat. And this idea of automation where you can use an AI agent to do something in an incredibly repetitive basis, or do things at great scale that humans could never do. And you can still need to instruct the system. You still need to apply preference to it. You still need to say, yes, this is the right thing I want, but it can do it far more times than we could ever do it. And I think that's where the application of things, I think that's where the value almost sits today. And I suppose always in the future. I know in the previous podcast we talked about AI can show me all the different flavors of ice cream that I want, that I might like, but it can't tell me exactly what I'm going to pick. And so it can do things at great scale and do things that I would otherwise want to do, but it still can't make the decision for me. And I think that's somewhere around that feels like the right element of the distinction between human creativity and to somewhat. And this is where that Ben Affleck thing came into it too. On the previs episode about.
Have you seen this Ben Affleck quote? Because I haven't actually seen it, but it came up in our last.
He
episode.
Talks about how AI doesn't have what he defines as taste, right? It can write something that imitates
in a style,
imitates Shakespeare.
Yeah.
You could probably tell it to do a Succession episode, but you change what happens in the end, and it might, long way down the line, it might be able to, but it can't tell you if that's good, really. And maybe there is a world where it can. And I'm not necessarily agreeing with this, but he was basically saying that at the end of the day, it takes a room full of humans to go, actually, that's good. That's going to be, that's not just an imitation.
Yeah. I feel like Nick Cave said the same thing, right? When ChatGPT first got released, there was a famous Nick Cave quote, and he came out and said something along the lines of, in a very Nick Cave way, right? He's a very kind of introspective, kind of intelligent guy. And he said something along the lines of, ChatGPT has no experience. It doesn't have its own history to understand the emotion of what it's producing. And I know that is probably the crux of what differentiates AI models from us, because everything we come up with is, even us, this conversation we're having now, there'll be some level of my personal history which is feeding into the things that I'm saying.
Of two minds, I do believe that there is an automation basis where you can produce a lot of content using AI, and you need a person to kind of pull the strings. But given enough monkeys with enough typewriters, can write Shakespeare. That's the kind of thing when you get enough data and you get enough compute and you get enough inputs, maybe you can start to do this.
Beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
That's kind of touching on an interesting point about, the ease with which content can be created now. And one of the big risks is just like a tsunami, a flood of mediocre content. And I think we're seeing this now. One of my favorite examples is that now with Amazon, they only allow you to publish 3 books a day, because they had too many coming in. But still, 3 books a day. So
that's
any person that's
you
publishing,
mean if you're a writer and you want to
if you're a
publish
writer, they've capped it. There were people were pushing, 10, 20 books a day. Anybody who's publishing 3 books or 1,000 books a year, you got to have some questions about the quality of that content.
Yeah.
Right. And the same thing, on social media these days, there's just so much AI generated content. And this is one of my fears about the future is just being buried in mediocre content. And it kind of gets to your point, like how do we know what's good, what's not? And I also think this is kind of maybe a fair point to mention that this is one of the roles that I see Jacquard takes is making this distinction. Just because you can generate content doesn't necessarily mean you should. There still has to be a big focus on quality. And this is what brands are going to be struggling with in the future. And there is going to be a technological component to that solution.
How do you think we get past this whole, and do you think it's real, this kind of whole dead internet theory, where if the internet fills up with more and more synthetically generated data, it dilutes the point where real human generated data is in there, and it's suddenly just bots talking to bots with generated data, and then LLMs are trained on data that came from LLMs, and then suddenly we end up in this whole thing just
if you think about
being ineffective.
If you think about SEO, that's kind of what SEO has been pre these models being a thing, right? Like machines crawling websites to decide whether to rank them or not, and so humans were creating content that suited the machines. And now that really is an infinity loop, because now you've got machines that can create that content,
but with no way to discern between a real person and AI generated content. And then there's those AIs being generated off content which is generated by AIs. It seemed to be, we'll get to the point where the whole thing will just stick and we won't move any further forward.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a real problem. It's a problem today, and like we've been saying, the solution's not going to be in distinguishing between human content and machine content. Obviously, we know that humans have been more than capable of generating poor quality content for a long time, right? But where there's challenges, there's opportunities as well. There's always going to be this sort of need and desire we're always going to want to consume content, art and in all avenues, and even things like news reporting. So when the average quality is going down, there's more opportunities for some brands or artists to rise above. And it's just who's going to find out how to do that.
They still need to very much focus on producing good content. And what do you think the best way of doing that is?
Well, the best way of producing high quality content, I think part of it is don't take necessarily the easy road. Just because you can generate a large volume of content, don't spam people, don't over optimize and send clickbaity stuff. This is also probably the real opportunity is in the future is this collaboration between AI and human creative types. And you have to be willing to take risks. I mean, this is another potential concern, is that all companies in the world have access to the same models, and maybe they'll fine tune them. But generally, if you've got a model saying this is what you should do, everyone starts doing the same, that's a problem. You need to be working with technologies that allow you to tailor it to yourself, to your own brand voice, to your own image. And that's going to be important. And then next step for that is use tools to test things out and to grow on what's working. You
still need to pay attention to what the other brands are doing as well, so you don't end up just all sounding homogenized and the same. Have you seen any fun new applications of AI recently that kind of caught your eye? I
mentioned this one internally the other day. I wouldn't say it's fun, but it's really, really useful. And so anybody who's got aging parents has heard about this, pig butchering schemes. Like, people phone you up and say, there's something wrong with your credit card or something, and they're trying to get you to log on to a fake. There's a very sophisticated scams out there, basically trying to get people to give up their bank details, and they are preying on the elderly. So Android is coming out with a feature which actually monitors calls in real time, and the phone will start shaking if it has detected that this is a likely scam. And I don't know how many, but trillions of dollars are lost every year around the world to these scams. That is something that's really, really going to helpful, because there's a bit of an arms race. Obviously, the scammers are using this technology, deep fakes, to pretend that they're that the call is coming from somebody they know or a loved one. But having some technology on the other side too, I think that's a great idea.
That is literally the last episode we discussed about. It wasn't. I thought you were going to go say a different thing there, Neil, because there was also this. I think it was it Virgin Media 2 who have created fake grannies, basically, where what they'll do is they will the hackers will call a particular number, and it will be a model on the other end that pretends to be someone who is vulnerable and listening to them and trying to, but it's just constantly wasting their time. And so they'll sit on their phone for 45 minutes being like, which button do I click, and how do I get to this bit, and how do I get to this bit, to try and like plug up the whole system and stop them finding
that's pretty good.
real vulnerable people.
Did you ever have that friend that would set their voicemail so it sounded like they just answered the phone?
Yes,
Yeah.
And they'd wait like 10
hello?
seconds before letting you know that it was actually a voicemail. Yeah, that was really annoying.
That's a good one.
So that's a great segue to move on to our bit of a fun segment. This one's called "Will AI Take Jasper's Job?" I think we worked out from the previous
This
series
one again.
that we worked out from the previous series that the answer is emphatically yes, and hopefully soon. But we're going to give this as another go. So Neil, what we're going to do is I'm going to.
There's no way I'm going to win this.
Well, we'll see. Yeah, when we chose this one for that exact reason.
Oh, right.
Yeah. I don't want you to win any of these. So what we're going to do is I've asked ChatGPT to give me an AI technology that needs a marketing purpose, right? And then I've asked ChatGPT to give me that marketing application of that technology. Jasper's going to come up with a marketing application of that technology. And Neil, you're going to decide which one's better. ChatGPT's interpretation of...
Is this blind? Will I know which is which?
Yeah, because I have to say
yeah,
it
he
live.
said
You haven't got it yet. Okay.
Yeah, the only
Yeah.
one I won last time we did it was because the guest, Scott, felt sorry for me, I think.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah. So I mean, it is sometimes quite clear. I think. I mean, sometimes the ChatGPT one is awful.
I mean, I've just figured out what I think the future of work is. The future of work is if you're smart enough to come up with an AI workflow that automates your job, then you should just get paid to sit at home and do nothing whilst the AI automates your job. That's
Yeah, work smarter, not harder.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. That's what I've been trying to do for the last 5 years. Some of these are going to be very dystopian, but I think that's a good thing. And this is not real, this one's just absurd. Well, maybe it is real. Maybe Neil can tell us. But the technology is some kind of AI-powered neural device that can record and interpret dreams, converting them to some form of consumable content. So, Jasper,
this is easy. Come on.
go on then.
Well, I mean, the issue is I don't dream, which is a
dream?
bold statement, but I very rarely dream, or I very, very rarely remember my dreams. So I've got two applications.
We're going to need to dig into
We'll dig into that later. Yeah. I've got two applications just off the cuff. The first one is for folks like me that kind of struggle to remember our dreams and only have sort of the rare dream that we can remember. Is this tool can record my dreams so that I can play them back the next day.
Yeah, okay.
There
needs to be a marketing purpose here.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I'm getting to it.
Sorry.
I just like that because there's a personal thing there where I always tell people that I never remember my dreams. So being able to play back my dreams on TV, and then you can put advertising into it, there's plenty of opportunity. The second one is to take the advertising lens but then put it into my dreams. So brands can
put ads in your dreams.
Brands, yeah. I mean, I know the last couple of episodes have involved me basically
You love ads that much. Jesus Christ.
I'm not sure that I want them. I'm not sure that I want them in my dreams, but the dystopian was okay.
Yeah, okay.
And so I'm like, well, why can't brands pay for a spot in my dream?
Okay, someone needs to take
tool.
you out of the AI CTO job immediately before you start having these ideas. Okay, so the ChatGPT one, brands could use the Dream Recorder to tap into consumers' subconscious desires and fears, tailoring advertisements to resonate deeply with these unfiltered emotions. For example, if a user's dream features tropical beaches, an AI analyzes the dream and pushes vacation packages or beachwear ads to their devices the next morning. Or a fitness brand could target users who dream of personal transformations, aligning their products with aspirational themes detected in their dreams. Neil, do you have a preference?
Before I answer that, I just want to give Jasper a challenge. So the thing with dreams is they're in your short-term memory. So you have a very narrow window of time to remember them when you wake up. So can I challenge you to get what's called a dream journal? So it's just a notebook and a piece of paper next to your bed. And the moment you wake up, try to remember what your dream was. And then maybe in future episodes, you can start by excerpts from Jasper's dream journal.
That's great.
We've
got some preamble. That's gonna save our preamble.
What I'm going to say on that is be careful what you wish for, because I do dream, but my dreams are always the most boring thing in the world.
Yeah, so are mine. When I remember them, it's like I went to the post office.
Yeah,
and
that's mine. I'm like commuting.
I stood at. So I'm not going to say this, but for the audience, me and Toby are born on the same day. Do you not think that's weird?
We dream the same, born on the same day.
Born on the same day, and we dream very mundane.
Yeah, I thought you said you couldn't remember them, so that I was going to say don't write. I would wake up and I would write down like had a shower.
Yeah, that's when I it's not that I never remember them, but occasionally I will. Boring. And then it was just like, I stood in line at the post office.
Yeah,
and then I had a nice conversation with the person.
So you just want ads in there?
Yeah, put some ads in there, man.
Make it a bit more interesting.
Okay, Neil, I want to know who wins.
Well, to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of either. I feel like it's trying to commercialize people's dreams is a bit invasive, to say the least. There might be.
Yeah, I just want to be clear. This is awful. Both of these are awful.
And so if I understand, it comes down to Jasper, who wants to inject advertisements into your dreams while you're asleep. And then ChatGPT wants to use your dreams to tailor what you're advertised when you're awake. And which of these is worse is really the question.
The question is which is worse.
You're definitely going to say mine is worse, aren't you?
I'm going to say, Jasper's.
I feel like that's not even in any sci-fi movie. Like literally injected.
It's actually a cool idea. Yeah, you're right.
I'm going to speak to VCs. I'm already. I'm just a shadow of myself. I'm already off speaking.
Do I want some insurance company inserting, ads into my dream at night? No, thank you.
Okay, so I've got another one. So AI creates a virtual replica of a person, product, or system, simulating interactions or behaviors. That's I feel like more could happen.
Hang on. So AI creates a replica of a person,
like an avatar of a person, product, or system, simulating interactions or behavior. It's quite broad.
Brands can create. So, like when you have like celebrity endorsements, they can create avatars of the celebrities. Obviously with the celebrity's permission. I don't believe in imitating people without their permission, but with permission, they can create avatars of the celebrity. So who's a really famous one at the moment?
Ben Affleck.
I don't think Ben Affleck has endorsed anything recently aside from saying that AI is bad. I was gonna say Tiger Woods and Nike, but that didn't end very well. So let's go with like Serena Williams, right?
Yeah,
she's an ambassador. So then you can create an avatar of Serena Williams, and you can like then send her to events to be an avatar, to be an ambassador for your brand.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, okay. I don't think this is like virtual and free space. This is like still on a TV. But you mean like.
I thought it was on like an actual.
No, I don't mean like a hologram.
Oh, fine. So then, same thing.
Same thing.
You walk into the Nike store and like their latest athlete is like there, greets you in the store.
Yeah, that's cool.
Pretends to sign some merchandise. that sort of thing.
So ChatGPT said brands could create digital twins of their products to simulate usage in different scenarios. For example, an automotive company could let customers test drive a digital twin in a virtual environment. I feel like that happens already. Complete with customizable features. Similarly, fitness brands could create digital twins of users to simulate workout results with their products. Neil, any thoughts on either of those?
Jasper, it's not looking good. Yeah.
I told you I wasn't going to win.
No, I couldn't think of anything either. But that's better. Go into a virtual world and be able to try before you buy. I think that's.
I've seen like all these brands were putting metaverse things in place, weren't they?
Yeah, that died very, very quickly. I think it died right after that guy spent like $200,000 to buy a plot of land next to Snoop Dogg or something mental.
Also, it's one of the things. Was it Second Life? Was that was like big 20 years ago? Remember Second Life?
Was that?
Yeah, and that was like it kind of came out of those massively multiplayer online role-playing games but it was like real life in virtual reality, and people would have houses and they would meet, and it was like this weird it was almost like a weird early 2000s, I want to say like millennium type thing where that everyone thought it was on Tomorrow's World. Do you ever remember Tomorrow's World? Was that anywhere outside of the UK? Doesn't matter. Anyway, it's not, and I feel like it's not a new thing. I feel like that's going to be a thing forever. It's going to come and go in virtual spaces, and I think a lot going back to what we were saying earlier, the real world needs to come back at some point. People are going to go, actually, you know what? Maybe a shop is a good idea at some point.
Owning a piece of land rather than having a virtual bunch of pixels that just because it's next to Snoop Dogg.
Constantly inside your Vision Pro is maybe not the right way to go.
And on that note, Neil, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure. And hopefully, I'm sure our audience will find lots of good insight from the conversation today. So thank you.
Yeah, I hope so too. It was lots of fun having this chat. So thanks for having me. Join
us for the next episode of The Array. We'll be discussing the intersection between marketing creativity and AI with our special guest, Grace Cowlard, who is creative director from companies such as Adidas. And please remember to like and subscribe The Array wherever you enjoy your favorite podcasts. Additional thanks to our production partners at Itch Media and the team at Jacquard. Chief Marketing Officer Marissa Adlet, Product Marketing Deanna Charlight, Creative Director Alejandro Santandrea, Senior Designer David Nolan, Brand Strategist Mariana Anchibia Engel, Production Coordinator Erin Hernandez, and Writer-Producer Peter Berg. We'll see you next time.